As we arrived at the hotel, my mother-in-law's words echoed in my mind. "This spa is perfect. I checked everything myself." She seemed unusually excited, even proud of her meticulous planning. Yet, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling of doubt. My husband Tony and I exchanged subtle glances, as if silently questioning this choice. The hotel was indeed beautiful, secluded deep within a mountainous region with sprawling trees and the fresh scent of pine. But as we approached the front doors, I felt something strange, something unsettling. My mother-in-law's confidence bordered on insistence. She assured me that she'd made every arrangement with my severe food allergy in mind, carefully choosing a seafood-based spa menu to avoid any risk. I wanted to believe her. After all, she was family. But her enthusiasm felt overbearing, almost forced. Was I just being paranoid? My concerns didn't seem to trouble her in the slightest. She marched forward, Tony and I following her into the grand lobby. As we checked in, I could barely focus on the luxurious surroundings. My mind kept flashing back to moments of hesitation and subtle discomfort that had crept into my gut since the trip began. The receptionist welcomed us with a courteous smile, exchanging a look with the manager standing nearby. The manager's smile faded slightly when she noticed my allergy badge on my bag, her face betraying a fleeting hint of worry. I wanted to ask why, but before I could, she leaned in closer, speaking just above a whisper. "If you value your safety, leave now." My heart raced. Her words startled me, almost freezing me in place. The lobby, which seconds ago seemed inviting, now felt strangely sinister. The warm tones and dim lighting began to feel confining, as if the walls themselves were closing in on us. I looked at Tony, hoping he'd overheard, but he was focused on his mother, who was already chatting animatedly with the receptionist about spa services. "Did you hear what she said?" I whispered to Tony, keeping my voice low. But before he could respond, the hotel manager gently nudged my shoulder, her expression one of quiet urgency. She didn't explain further but motioned for us to follow her to a nearby hallway. Tony, still confused, reluctantly followed me as I trailed the manager down the corridor, away from the bustling reception area. She stopped at a side entrance leading to a deserted hallway and looked over her shoulder. "Listen, I don't have much time. You must leave now while you still can," she said. I could hear the underlying tension in her voice, a slight tremble that only deepened my anxiety. "There's something you should know about your mother-in-law," she began, but just then, the receptionist's voice called out from down the hall. The manager froze, her face going pale. "Please, just trust me. If you value your life, get out before it's too late." With that, she hurriedly walked away, casting one last pleading look in my direction. Tony pulled me aside, his brow furrowed with worry. "What's going on, Sandra? What did she mean by that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I struggled to find an answer, confusion swirling in my mind. Could there really be something wrong with this place? And what did the manager mean about my mother-in-law? Tony's mother had always been kind and helpful, particularly when it came to accommodating my severe allergy to meat. She'd been the one to suggest the spa trip in the first place, choosing a place she claimed would be perfectly safe for me. But now, as I thought back on her planning, little details started to bother me. She'd never been this insistent on choosing a specific place for us before, and she had brushed aside any attempts I'd made to get details. "Trust me, Sandra. It's all under control," she'd repeated whenever I'd asked. Now that trust felt misguided. Tony seemed torn, caught between loyalty to his mother and concern for me. "Maybe she just doesn't understand how serious your allergy really is," he reasoned, attempting to reassure me. But his words only amplified my unease. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. There was a sense of intentionality in her actions, something I couldn't yet grasp. Every instinct screamed that we should leave, yet logic insisted it was nothing, just paranoia stirred by a stranger's warning. I tried to shake off the uneasiness, attempting to focus on the picturesque surroundings. The hotel, built in a classic style, had rich wooden beams and large windows overlooking lush mountain landscapes. But the beauty only intensified the sense of isolation, as though the scenic views were trapping us rather than freeing us. My mother-in-law continued chatting with the receptionist, completely unfazed by the manager's mysterious warning. As we collected our room keys, she beamed at us, her excitement unsettling against the tension lingering in my mind. "Isn't this place perfect? I knew you'd love it, Sandra," she said, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. I managed a weak smile, my mind still racing with the manager's words. Tony gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, but I could tell he was equally unsettled. We followed his mother up to our room, passing dimly lit hallways adorned with paintings of past hotel guests whose faces seemed to watch us. The strange atmosphere clung to me, making it hard to relax. Our room was spacious and well decorated, with a large bed and a view of the mountains, but the isolation was stifling. As soon as the door closed, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Tony, we have to leave," I blurted out, struggling to contain my panic. Something isn't right here. And that manager, she wouldn't just say something like that for no reason. Tony sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. "Sandra, I know you're scared, but maybe it's all a misunderstanding," he replied, though his voice wavered slightly. "Mom has planned everything, and it's our first trip as a family since we got married. Leaving now would hurt her feelings." I felt torn. I didn't want to cause tension between Tony and his mother, but the weight of the warning lingered heavily in my mind. What if it's not a misunderstanding? "The manager said something about your mother, Tony," I pressed, hoping he'd take me seriously. He sighed, clearly conflicted, but before he could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. It was my mother-in-law, her eyes wide with a curious gleam. "Are you both ready for the spa?" she asked, her tone light and cheerful. I forced a smile, my voice barely masking the anxiety building inside me. "I think I'll rest for a bit," I replied, not wanting to leave the safety of the room. She looked disappointed but didn't push, simply nodding as she walked back down the hall. As soon as she was gone, I turned to Tony, my resolve hardening. "Let's just explore the hotel a little," I suggested, hoping to find any signs to validate my growing suspicions. Tony hesitated, then nodded, knowing that our options were limited. We left the room and wandered down the narrow hallways, our footsteps echoing in the silent corridors. The hotel seemed almost too quiet, as though it were holding its breath, waiting. Occasionally, I felt eyes on us, the shadows cast by dim lighting adding an unsettling layer to our surroundings. We reached a small lounge area near the spa entrance, where I noticed the manager again, speaking in hushed tones with a staff member. She glanced up, locking eyes with me, her face grim. I wanted to approach her, ask for clarity, but just then, Tony's mother appeared, waving us over with a bright smile. "Come, let's enjoy the spa," she called, her tone cheery yet somehow off-putting. Reluctantly, we followed her into the spa area, which was lavish and tranquil, filled with the soft scent of lavender. It was the sort of place designed for relaxation, yet every muscle in my body was tense. As we sat by the heated pools, I felt my mother-in-law's gaze linger on me, her smile unyielding. "This is perfect, isn't it, Sandra?" "Just what you needed," she said softly, a curious edge to her tone that made my skin crawl. I glanced at Tony, whose face mirrored my unease. "Yes," I mumbled, my voice barely audible as unease pooled within me. After some time in the spa, Tony and I excused ourselves, saying we wanted to take a walk outside. My mother-in-law nodded, her smile never faltering, but I noticed a flicker of disappointment in her eyes as we left. The fresh mountain air hit us like a bomb as we stepped out onto the hotel's veranda, away from the oppressive atmosphere inside. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension ease slightly as we strolled along the winding path that led around the hotel grounds. "Tony, we need to get out of here," I said quietly, glancing over my shoulder to make sure we were alone. "This place feels wrong, and your mother is acting strange." Tony looked thoughtful, glancing back at the hotel with a hint of doubt in his eyes. "I get what you're saying, Sandra. But maybe it's just nerves. She went through all this effort to plan a trip for us, and leaving now would cause so much drama." I felt my frustration rise, but I understood his loyalty. Still, the urgency in my chest wouldn't subside. "Tony, please, let's just go back to the room and pack," I insisted, my tone more pleading than demanding. Reluctantly, he nodded, and we turned back toward the hotel, unaware of the figure watching us from a distance. As we walked back, I noticed a movement in the shadows near the hotel entrance. The manager was standing there, half hidden by the doorway. Her eyes met mine, and she subtly gestured toward the side exit, a pleading expression on her face. This time, I couldn't ignore her silent message. "Tony, let's just see what she wants," I whispered, gripping his arm. He seemed hesitant but nodded, and we carefully made our way toward her. When we reached her, she led us to a secluded corner just outside the hotel, glancing over her shoulder repeatedly. "I'm sorry for scaring you earlier," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "But there's something you need to know." She paused, her eyes flickering with concern. "Your mother-in-law? She didn't tell us about your allergies. In fact, she specifically requested the chef prepare meat-based dishes, despite her knowing you're allergic." My stomach dropped, the truth settling heavily in my mind. "She knew?" I whispered, horror creeping into my voice. The manager nodded, her expression one of genuine worry. "Please, I beg you, leave now, before it's too late." Her words sent chills down my spine, each syllable etching a terrible suspicion in my mind. Shaken, I grabbed Tony's hand and began pulling him back toward our room, my heart racing with fear. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversation and odd behavior from my mother-in-law over the past few weeks. Her strange insistence on this specific hotel, her cheerful disregard for my questions, and now this. Deliberately planning meals that could put my life in danger? Tony seemed equally stunned, struggling to accept what the manager had said. "I can't believe she'd do something like this," he murmured, disbelief mingling with anger. I squeezed his hand, feeling tears prick my eyes. "Tony, we can't stay here. She's put me in harm's way, and I don't know why, but we have to leave." He nodded slowly, his resolve hardening as the weight of the situation became clear. Back in our room, we hurriedly gathered our belongings, barely speaking as we packed. My hands trembled, both from fear and adrenaline, as I stuffed clothes into my suitcase. Just as we zipped up our bags, there was a sudden knock on the door. The knock was light but insistent, and my heart skipped a beat. Tony motioned for me to stay back as he cautiously opened the door. My mother-in-law stood there, her expression eerily calm, her eyes scanning the packed bags. "Going somewhere?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her tone. I could feel my pulse quicken as she stepped inside, her gaze fixed on me. "Sandra, I've gone through so much trouble for this trip, and now you're running off? That's hardly polite," she said, her voice laced with an unsettling sweetness. I tried to hold my ground, but the words of the manager echoed in my mind. "You specifically arranged meals with meat, even though you know I'm allergic," I confronted her, struggling to keep my voice steady. Her smile faltered, but only for a moment. "Oh, Sandra, don't be so dramatic. It was just a little experiment. I wanted to see if your allergy was really as severe as you claim." Tony's face turned pale with shock, anger flashing in his eyes. "Mom, how could you?" he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief and disgust. For a moment, silence hung heavily in the room, the tension thick and suffocating. I could hardly process her words. She had willingly endangered my life. Out of curiosity? The idea was too horrific to grasp. "It's not a joke, and it's not an experiment," I managed, my voice shaking with emotion. "Anaphylactic shock can be fatal, and you know that." My mother-in-law's face remained impassive, as though my words meant nothing. Tony stepped between us, his expression hardening. "Sandra's life isn't a game, Mom. We're leaving." His words were firm, final, and they seemed to finally break through her indifferent demeanor. She looked at him, her gaze narrowing. "Fine," she replied coldly. "Run away then. But don't expect me to welcome you back with open arms." With that, she turned and left, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. I felt a rush of relief, mixed with the lingering chill of her words. We waited until we heard her retreating footsteps fade, then quickly grabbed our bags and headed for the exit, every step bringing us closer to safety. We reached the hotel lobby, hearts pounding, only to find the manager waiting by the door. Her face softened with relief when she saw us, and she gave a small, encouraging nod. "The taxi is ready outside," she whispered, guiding us toward the exit. The cold night air hit us as we stepped outside, the mountain silence broken only by the soft hum of the waiting car. As we drove away, I looked back, watching the hotel disappear into the darkness, feeling a strange mixture of freedom and fear. My mother-in-law's actions had shattered my trust, leaving scars that would take time to heal. Tony sat beside me, silent but resolute, his hand clasping mine tightly as though grounding us both. When we finally reached home, we contacted Tony's father, sharing everything that had happened. He was appalled, promising to handle things from his end, but we both knew nothing would be the same again. The events of that night would haunt us, a constant reminder of the thin line between trust and betrayal. As Tony held me close, I felt a sliver of hope. Together, we'd rebuild stronger than ever, knowing that we'd survived a darkness we'd never expected.